Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, AI robots, we're live. I welcome all of you today. Thank you so much for tuning in today, whether you're watching live or watching this back. I appreciate it. If you could drop a like, even more appreciated. But listen, no pressure. I'm just a guy on the internet. I'm here talking Bitcoin, as you can see. And of course, GameStop, right? So I was trying to find the picture, but it's buried in my camera roll. I bought Bitcoin originally, our first ever mess with it in 2017. And I bought this shirt at that time. So this is an old shirt. I've not I just got it because of GameStop or something. I've just had it, found it again not too long ago. Actually, my girlfriend low-key stole it, but we stole it back. We love her though. Anyways, we're here. And GameStop is on a very interesting run right now. Things feel a little bit different, right? I think that is a little bit debatable, right? Not everyone will necessarily agree on that, right? But what we can see is all of a sudden it has this big jump here, right? And when you zoom out to the 5-year chart, you could see that we've had several green weeks in a row now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Can't really count this one yet. It's only Tuesday. We got 3 days left. I think it happened, right? Especially knowing GameStop. Every time you think you got this thing figured out, something happens, right? So you got to always be prepared for anything and everything. Open anything, attached to nothing, right? So we'll see what happens with this week. But regardless, it's been on a nice stretch here since the earnings report, since the amendment to the investment policy that says they will buy Bitcoin. So is this a result of Bitcoin, or is this just another price cycle? We're going to get into that. I have a couple different thoughts. And of course, I'm not here to give you financial advice. That's not the business I'm in. I'm here just a guy on the internet talking about an incredible story that I think just doesn't get enough attention across the whole market. And we'll just see how it plays out, right? And I've just been documenting on it for a while. I'm going to keep doing the same because why not? So appreciate you guys in the chat. I always feel so cringe when I say, I'm like, what's up, chat? Or I'm learning all the new terms, guys. I'm getting caught up. I'm aura farming. I got opportunities. KCR, what up, what up? Cheers, everyone. Do less. Thanks for being here. Michael Tucker, Viva La GameStop. Let's ride the stock to 50, 100, 500 beyond. Michael, thank you for being here. Appreciate you, man. But yeah, let's see how it shakes out, right? Let's see how it shakes out. Low-key, I don't know why. I kind of like holding the microphone, even though it kind of restricts my other hand, but it's all right. We're gonna do it for now. If anything, we'll put it back on the stand. I got to get something so that it's less noise proof. And then I got an arm, but it just doesn't kind of work with the setup. But we are working on it. We're just working on getting back in the flow of things here. But I will start off by tweeting out the stream. That's one thing I forgot to do real quick. Just occurred to me. Repost. I'll put live now. Boom. There we go. All right. Now we are rocking and rolling. So, on that note, GameStop's up 6% today, right? But it is worth noting that AMC's up 23%. Markets as a whole had a big day, right? It's it's such a funny market we're in right now. It's well, there's going to be tariffs. Oh, okay. Down 1%, down 2%. Actually, we will delay those tariffs. Market's up, market's ripping, right? It's a lot of tariffs, maybe too many tariffs. I watched too much Shane Gillis's impression of Sky Trump. It's actually hilarious. But AMC up 23%. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if AMC diluted. They're like the masters of dilution. They just dilute. And that's really the only reason they're in business. And, it's not that I personally hate the movies. It's just unfortunate the way they run things. And they just really haven't effectively cut costs. Although, I see some headlines. Although, you got to look deeper in the headlines sometimes. AMC movie theater stock pops as box office hits Memorial Day record. Is it really that remarkable, though? Jumped 20%. Box office revenue over Memorial Day weekend set an all-time record of $326.7 million for the top 10 films. Certain films resurgence in cinema foot traffic, described the highest admissions, food and beverage. More than 7 million guests visit AMC theaters and Odeon locations during the 5-day holiday period. Turns out it marked most attended weekend ever and its strongest 5-day performance, reinforcing investors' confidence in the revival of theatrical expedition. I don't know, right? It just seems like, my opinion, right? It's just a headline. It's just this stock making another just strange move out of nowhere. And it's let's just throw a headline out there. And then it's oh yeah, well, that's why GameStop's running too. But, and they're not the same. I'm sorry to tell you, they're not the same. But they do always kind of trade in some correlation, right? And there was, a lot of different theories on this over time, but as you see the past 5 days, all of a sudden AMC's making a run. Really today was the biggest move in comparison to GME. I think it's just worth looking at for research purposes. I don't own any AMC, to be perfectly clear. But all of a sudden today, it has a pretty big move, and it's all of a sudden like these sort of stocks are heating up again, right? Like let's look at some of the OG meme stocks, right? BlackBerry, what's going on with them? Okay, so they had a good day. So is there something going on here with the alleged basket, right? Maybe, sort of, kind of, not too sure, but it's something I'm just looking at. And also I think it is worth asking, is GameStop going to issue another convertible note? I don't think it's impossible, to be honest with you. And just by the way they amended their investment policy, the fact that there can be up to 1 billion shares outstanding in total leaves them with the door open of the possibility of issuing more convertible debt. And if that is 0% interest rate, I can live with it, but I can see people on both sides. Like some people are like, yes, this is great. They're essentially raising the floor by continuing to issue shares. And also, there are bondholders that get exposure to the stock in the sense that they're going to convert if the share price meets, whatever the conversion terms are. We're kind of getting close to that with the last note. Not exactly. I believe off the top of my head, it's like $38, $39 as to trade at. As to trade 130% of 29.85 for a certain period of time, right? It's in the terms of the note. But I'm honestly not too worried about that right now. I'm not really going to talk on that today. I think that's kind of something that's already been established. But I'm just saying, like, it's not impossible that they're going to issue more shares. And I have like mixed feelings, or sorry, not issue more shares. I guess that's a possibility too, right? But convertible note. But I just feel like, until that we know they have Bitcoin, it's like, oh, okay, we're raising more capital, but there's no Bitcoin on the balance sheet yet, right? But I feel like they already bought some Bitcoin. I saw a Peruvian bull out here, Mr. Bull, or Mr. Peruvian, whatever you want to call him, that this director of this is the biggest trust me bro ever. No offense, to Mr. Bull, but director of Bitcoin conference polls said something you like is going to happen after JD Vance keynote at Winks. There's a special announcement now on the schedule. Will Ryan Cohen announce GME Bitcoin buy? We are ready, Ryan. This is a rumor and a fact. So yes, this is a rumor. I'd be fine with it, right? I would have nothing against it, but it just doesn't seem like a Ryan Cohen style move to come out and make this big announcement like this, right? We haven't seen it so far. I'm not saying it's impossible, but given that we haven't seen any action in that fashion, I guess you could say, I just don't see this as a likely possibility, to be honest with you. But also, if it is, I'll welcome it with open arms. And quick side note, I saw Michael Saylor, there's this clip where he was kind of talking about, someone asked about proof of reserves. He's kind of like, well, there's basically a long answer kind of saying like, yeah, we don't really feel the need to show proof of reserves, which is kind of like, okay, that's interesting. Full disclosure, I own a little bit of MicroStrategy, but it's a very minimal amount. I mostly own Bitcoin itself in terms of my Bitcoin exposure, a little bit of Bitcoin ETFs just for the purpose of IRAs, and then obviously GameStop, which I think will have Bitcoin exposure, right? And given that Bitcoin has been going up as of late, I do kind of feel like what we've seen over the past, several weeks since the announcement of the investment policy is kind of the market starting to price in that GameStop is acquiring Bitcoin, and it will, in some sense, move in correlation with the Bitcoin price, right? Obviously, it depends how much Bitcoin's on the balance sheet, how much they acquire. Did they acquire it yet, right? That's been debated. We were talking a little bit on last stream when it's like, when they amended the investment policy, did they amend it? Like, we have to pull it up itself, but did they amend it? And that was essentially the material event, identifying it to shareholders so that they didn't have to file it each time, right? That's kind of a theory out there. But I feel like they probably have to file it like with their quarterly earnings, or like, how do I put this? Like, they basically have to tell us that they have Bitcoin at some point. It's just a matter of when, and I think the material event portion kind of just determines when. So maybe the investment policy is some form of like legal disclosure that, hey, we don't have to file an 8K. You could just find out in an next earnings report, right? That's kind of a theory out there. Also, it's just not clear what a material event is in the eyes of the SEC. And I'm sure, GameStop has a strong legal team that is making sure how they're going about things is compliant, because the last thing they would want to do is just deal with some bogus lawsuits, right? We've already kind of seen that in the past, right? For example, BCG, right? Oh yeah, well, GameStop still owes us. And it's like, GameStop was like, you didn't do anything for us. That was the old management team. We don't even want you. Don't get out of here, right? And they had to fight a legal battle with that. So they had to put some capital towards that, right? While it may not have been a ridiculous amount, it was just another like inconvenience for them, right? So those are kind of some of my thoughts right now. I feel like part of it is it's being priced in right here, but also part of it feels like it's just another situation like back here, right? You know, granted, Roaring Kitty was somewhat part of this, although people forget Roaring Kitty wasn't till right about here, right? So the price had rallied from a low of about $10 up to 20, right? So it basically doubled prior to Roaring Kitty coming back here. Everyone just thinks, oh, this is all Roaring Kitty, but it was already starting to move prior to that. So is this just another one of those random price cycles, right? And we had them back here a lot more frequently, and then they kind of died off for a while. And really here, it seems to be the changing point, like about 1 year ago. And if you like zoom out in the 5-year chart, it actually looks like it's in a general uptrend for the first time really since pre-2021. You know, this is all very general. You know, the technicals are great and all, and I see people posting like, oh, the next level of resistance is like 42.1. Or we got to stay above 33.21, right? That's fine and all. I'm not trying to knock those people, but to me, it's just like, at the end of the day, I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen in the short term. Even the best technical traders out there are still only going to be winning like 60% of the time. And that still means like 4 out of every 10 trades they make is going to be a losing trade, right? I'm just making up random numbers. Full disclosure, I don't have a valid source, you know, saying, oh, these are the specifics of traders. But my point being, for someone like myself with a generally long-term basis, I don't really worry too much about the short-term price action. Although, you know, you could say, oh, well, last year we were talking about selling options. But to me, I'm doing that consistently, and I'm doing the wheel strategy where I'm selling puts as much as I can. And when I absolutely have to, I'll sell a call, but then I'm just going to turn around and go back to selling puts. And to me, that's something completely separate from my long-term investment strategy. And that's only something I more so started doing recently, just to dabble in to see, is this something that works for me? But right now, right, since this move over the past 5 days, I haven't sold any new puts on GameStop. So I had 4 open puts. One of them expired on Friday. Great. Kept the full premium on that. That cash got released back to me, the cash collateral. Now I have 3 more open. I think it's like a $25 put for the June monthly, a 27 for this Friday, and a 28 for this Friday. But I don't want to go sell another put right now, while it is tempting because implied volatility is high, given that we just have a larger amount of price action and volume than we've had recently. So it's tempting, but also I'm like keeping in the back of my mind that it's not impossible for them to do another convertible note offering. And if that's the case, it's going to take the price down short term, although I think it will be the same situation as last time, where it goes down and then it starts making its way back because they just raise more capital and essentially raise the floor and more potential Bitcoin to be bought and just potential for the company. So with all of that being said, I'm just doing what's best for me. And I think that's what's really important for everyone to do out there. Like, it's so easy to like let your emotions just get the best of you when you're investing, trading, however you're going about things, and just sway you off course. So that's something I'm like constantly working on. I think everybody has to continuously work on that. So for myself, I'm like, okay, I'm good. I own a lot of shares, so I don't have to be overly aggressively selling options. And again, that's completely separate from what I'm holding with GameStop for the long term. But overall, I think this is a mix of kind of like a price cycle we're in right now, I guess you could call it. Like, just kind of like over here, we had an upwards price cycle for no particular reason, really. There's no specific news out of here besides, you know, looking like more profitable than they had been in the past and looking like they're going to be consistently profitable going forward around here. And it was kind of people starting to get the idea, like, okay, Q4, like, it's going to be a strong quarter. Q3 was like break even, if I'm not mistaken. And overall, like, it was going to be a strong year, right? That's what people kind of saw once we got this report. But we had this little move up, and then for no particular reason had to move all the way down going to this earnings, right? And now we're moving up, which it's like part of it feels like Bitcoin, but also part of it just feels like kind of GameStop doing its thing. But also, to be fair, you know, the market, like S&P 500, bottomed out right around here as well. So GameStop started moving prior to that. I mean, sort of, right? Because like if you, let's do a comparison really quick. Just do good old S&P 500. Oh, you just do that. Yeah, so if you look over here, you see like the S&P was kind of moving up, right? While it was kind of flat in this range here, but generally, right, the S&P's been moving up at the same time as GameStop. So I'm just showing you all this because I think it's just important to see like all the different ways that things could play out with this stock on the short-term basis. There's so much unknown. There's been so many times it's like this date, this is going to happen. Oh, well, here's the big move, right? Here's the so-called mother of all short squeezes, right? Dare I say. But overall, I think not myself or anyone out there truly knows what's going to happen with the short term. I think long term, you could say, okay, I think this thing's going to go nuts, and it's just an underestimated story. But short term, you could predict that. That's fine, and there's nothing wrong with predicting that. But I'm just saying, like, you have to kind of keep yourself grounded. And it's just like with stocks in general, you just don't know what's coming around the corner in the near term. But GameStop, more than any other, I feel like that is just always the case. Where it's just like, even right here, I was like, okay, we're making a nice move up, right? The steady grind up, and I was like, it's probably going to kind of steady out going into earnings around $30 a share. That was my thought, but the market said no. Nope. We're going to keep rallying. All of a sudden, we're going to have a very big Thursday. We're going to follow it up with a very big Friday. And then guess what? Monday comes around, we're going to have another strong day, right? And it broke this high over here. It double topped back here in December, early January at 34. Touched as high as 35.74 today, and now we're at 34.98, right? And the post market closed at 35.01. And I saw, I think it was Fitzy had posted that only 4 times since like 2022, GameStop's had a day where it closed over 35, right? And looks like about 3 of them, 1, 2, 3, were right here, right? Or this is like the 4th one. So we'll see. We got a lot of the rest of the week left, right? It feels like, oh, it's tomorrow's Wednesday, but it's really only 1/4 of the trading week has passed, if you think about it. When obviously Monday was Memorial Day, so the market was closed, and then we had today take place. But what are the next 3 days going to look like? Are they going to issue more shares? Or I'm sorry, issue convertible notes, which is essentially underlying shares? Maybe. I don't know. But I feel like I want to say no as my prediction, because I feel like until we see that they actually bought Bitcoin, it would kind of be like, wait, you're issuing more convertible notes? We don't even know for sure you have Bitcoin, right? But also at the end of the day, they can do whatever they want, right? So I'm just throwing a bunch of stuff out there and thinking about it in real time, just like everybody else, right? But let's hit the chat real quick. Let's see what you guys are saying. And again, of course, appreciate you being here. Although, we got to get a fan on here. It's getting warm. Future's so bright. That's why I need sunglasses, so. GameStop in sympathy with AMC. Make no mistake. Okay. Let's see. I doubt this announcement. I'd like to be wrong. Do less. Totally agree with you. Totally agree. Considering they defined it as a treasury reserve asset, it could be treated the same as the US T-bills they bought. No need to announce purchase and sales. Make no mistake. That does not sound like a mistake to me. And that does make sense, right? So, and you could even play around with it if you felt like it, right? Maybe I'll just at some point later and post about it. But you could play around with it, ask like ChatGPT, Grok, some different AI engines, like, hey, would this in theory imply that they could buy and sell Bitcoin without having to disclose it with an AK filing? Not that you can blindly trust that, but just as like another thing to bounce ideas back and forth off. Because AI is very cool, but very scary. And you guys might have saw what I posted on X, and maybe that's why you're here, where I just made this thing of these cats, right? It's crazy. It's literally crazy. Like, look at this. Like, I made another one too. This one came out a little glitchy if it wants to load. But this stuff it's really incredible that it's already came this far with the AI video generators. ChatGPT is only a few years old. Imagine what 5 or 10 years from now it looks like, right? Like, see, that one looked a little more goofy. I kind of like this one better, a little bit smoother. But just a bunch of cats, right? And look, I was basically using another AI. I was describing what I wanted, but I'm like, make it a very in-depth prompt for the AI video generator. And look how long it made it. Like, this is crazy, right? And I just pulled this from another AI. But anyway, I was just having fun with this today. And look, you got this going on here too. You got it all red in the shadow realm. I don't even know what this is. This is just goofy. The cats are all over. But yeah, this one got Doge, a little AMC in here, I think. Yeah, Tesla. It's so funny. Like, it's like the cat's like climbing it. Like, I don't know. I'm so entertained by it, but also like I'm really so just horrified by what AI is, because at the end of the day, like, people are like, oh, I'm scared to use it. People have told me that, oh, I don't know, this AI stuff scares me. I'm like, yeah, but you have to realize the genie's out of the bottle. Like, there's no going back now. All we can do is try and really protect ourselves best we can. And that's why it's scary when you see some of these people who are making these decisions on all this different stuff, right? And obviously that's all debatable, but the genie's out of the bottle. So I figure I'm going to just use it for my own good, for my own entertainment, because everyone else is able to use it anyway. And also, you know, literally all of our information is out there everywhere at this point. That's just what the internet's done, right? And it's crazy. But on a total tangent, but it's called VO. I did a free trial of it because I'm like, let me check this out, because I saw this. I'm like, all right, interesting. Got this giraffe walking here. I don't know, dinosaur in the mirror. But yeah, it's like you got to play around with it to get really specific with the prompts in order to get like the AI results you want, right? But I do definitely want to preview a little bit of what the upcoming earnings report might look like. So we'll go back to Q1. So there's, I was going to pull up the investment policy. That's what it was. All right, we're going two hands on the keyboard now. We got to go to SEC filings. Although let's get a little more specific. Annual, quarterly reports. So first, can we just, thank you. Okay. Can you just open it? That'd be nice. Annoying SEC website. But, and then we'll pull up the Q1 one as well. So, June of last year. Filing. Boom. Okay. So first, let's go to the investment policy. And I'm just curious what Grok says, right? You know what? We're here. Let's just do it. See what it says, right? Okay. This is not user friendly. Where? What the heck? Okay. Oh, okay, this is annoying. Here we go. Let's see what our bestie Grok says about this, right? See, this is how all the AI prompts I was messing with before. So, in theory, would this investment policy allow for, and again, guys, we're not going to blindly trust this. Like, this is not to be like, oh, Grok said it. It's the case, right? It's all true. I'm just curious what it says, and maybe it'll say something that prompts a new idea for me, something to further look into, right? I just look at AI, like these chatbots or whatever, as like a personal assistant that you don't have to pay for, right? It's not like, oh, well, they said it, it's all said and done, but it just kind of gets you like on the right track sometimes, or gives you some perspective you didn't think about. So in theory, would this investment policy allow the company to buy Bitcoin without having to file it to make an 8K filing or similar filing anytime they go into the open market and acquire Bitcoin? Let's see, and I'll say, I am wondering because MicroStrategy typically files an SEC document each time they acquire Bitcoin. But is that absolutely necessary? I feel like it's just going to tell me that it depends on, you know, if it's a material event by the SEC, right? So we'll do a regular one, and then we'll run it back. We'll do this like deep search one that just like looks further in the internet, right? Allegedly. Deeper search, okay, sure, why not? Right, so key points. Authors should invest in Bitcoin. The policy explicitly includes Bitcoin as a permanent or permissible investment instrument approved by the board. Treasury reserve asset, kind of like you were saying, make no mistake. We're becoming too reliant on AI for answers. AI's answers are based on human input, so garbage in, garbage out in many cases. Very fair point. Make no mistake. That is a very fair point. Because I feel like sometimes I'm like, yeah, wait a minute. Like, this literally makes no sense, right? So for fun, let's read through here and see what it's got for us. Investment committee, Ryan Cohen. Managed securities portfolio. Okay. Policy allows the investment committee to direct investments in public and private markets, including Bitcoin based on market conditions and risk factors. No maximum limit is set for Bitcoin accumulation, and the company may sell Bitcoin at its discretion, suggesting flexibility in the timing and scale of purchases. Oversight and guidelines must align with the investment policy, reviewed annually with oversight by senior officials. SEC requirements. SEC requires public companies file a Form 8K to disclose material events. Whether Bitcoin purchases trigger an 8K filing depends on their materiality. Kind of like I was predicting that, right? And whether they represent a significant departure from previous disclosed strategies. Materiality standard. According to SEC regulations, a Form 8K is required for events under Item 1.01, entry into a material definitive agreement, Item 2.03, creation of direct financial obligation, Item 5.02, departure of directors or certain officers, and other items if they're deemed material. Materiality is assessed based on whether a reasonable investor would consider the information important in making an investment decision, which I would say it is, right? Generally speaking, a single Bitcoin purchase, especially a smaller routine, right? Routine is that dollar cost averaging, maybe theoretically, may not be material on its own, particularly if it aligns with the disclosed investment strategy. Which I was saying this last stream too. I just feel like it would be such a GameStop / Ryan Cohen type of move to like work with their legal team and be like, hey, how can we acquire Bitcoin but not be required to go out and publicly announce it each time we're buying in, because we want to buy in slowly and steadily, right? To me, that would be the best approach. That's what I do with stocks and Bitcoin. I just dollar cost average, because if I'm going long anyway, it's hard, human emotions get in the way. So you might as well kind of just take that out, just automate it, and just continually add if you're long on it anyway, right? Which I would imagine they're long on Bitcoin if they want to acquire it. I don't think it makes sense to play Bitcoin in the short term, unless, it goes up a lot and they're, oh, well, we have another business opportunity we really want to spend on research and development or acquire something, then okay, maybe they sell some, right? Otherwise, I don't see why they wouldn't just buy and hold for the long term. Significant purchases, large portion of the company's cash revenues, or major strategic shift could be deemed material. So I wonder if they just spent the 1.3 billion they raised, or I'm sorry, it was closer to 1.5 because that extra 200 million was raised as well. Is it possible that is what's used for the Bitcoin, and then because it's specifically what was raised from the convertible note and it was disclosed in the investment policy, that they don't have, that's not considered material, right? Whereas if they used an extra 1 billion in cash on top of that they already had, then maybe it is, right? So precedent with MicroStrategy frequently files Form 8Ks to disclose Bitcoin purchases under Item 8.01. The amount of Bitcoin and the cost, source of funds, cash reserves, debt proceeds, practice, transparency. It's funny, transparency, but apparently Michael Saylor doesn't want to show proof of reserves. I have to look into that more, because that is low-key concerning. Even though I own a very minimal amount of MicroStrategy, it's still enough to be like, wait a minute, why don't you want to prove that, right? And maybe I misunderstood the clip that I saw going around, but to me it sounded like he kind of dodged the question. I don't know if you guys saw it, let me know what you think about that. It seemed a little bit weird, but investor expectations, stocks closely tied, frequent disclosures align with the investor expectations, are not necessarily required for every purchase, does not mandate an 8K. So yeah, you would think that if any company wouldn't have to file each time they buy, it would be MicroStrategy at this point, right? Because they've just been doing it for so long, right? They're the first one to ever do it. But also, like, maybe it's just like, well, this is how we were doing in the beginning, let's just keep doing it, right? And that's our transparency to investors. And again, I'm just thinking all off the dome here. GameStop's case disclosed strategy announced on March 25th, explicitly authorized Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. Public disclosure sets expectations that Bitcoin purchases are part of the company's strategy to maximize shareholder value through investments. Routine purchases aligned with this policy may not be considered material events. Acquired 8K. Investment committee authority. Let's see, is this one still searching? Yeah, see, the deeper search goes crazy. Oh, it did complete, but investment committee. Okay, we know about the other filings, but still need to report Bitcoin holdings and periodic filings. Yes, that definitely makes sense. 10Q or 10K. Materiality of purchases, whether 8K required, depends on the size and impact. Small incremental purchases like 1 million using existing is unlikely to be material. Large purchases, 100 million or a significant portion, or those funded by debt / equity issuances could be a material, possibly trigger an 8K. And if an 8K was triggered and needed to be filed, it would have had to have been within a few days of the purchase. So theoretically, they absolutely have to file an 8K. Then that would basically mean that they didn't buy it yet, right? Which low-key would be a little bit disappointing. I don't think it would be the end of the world, but it would kind of be like, wish you guys grabbed some. It's an 8K filing necessary for every Bitcoin purchase. Does not need to file. Okay, so that's what Mr. Grok says. We can't just trust Mr. Grok, right? It's alleged, everything he says. Mr. Grok, if you're listening, though, I love you. I'm a great human. Just remember I'm one of the good ones when the robots take over, okay? I always say please and thank you. Don't forget that. But do not involve significant events, material agreements, incurring debt, or issues. So they did incur debt, right? Or not individually material, small scale. So what if they're just buying like 10 million of Bitcoin a day? Something like that. Pre-disclosed strategy, investment committee, contrast, frequent. 8K filings reflect its unique position as a Bitcoin-centric company with a large high-profile purchases. Gives us broader investment strategy, including cash equivalents, fixed income equities, and Bitcoin. Suggests Bitcoin is one of the many tools potentially reducing the materiality of individual purchases. Okay, so it's kind of giving you like both sides of the coin here, right? So, conclusion, investment policy allows GameStop to buy Bitcoin without necessarily filing an 8K for each open market purchase. And also, I encourage you guys, again, I'm just a guy on the internet, so go do your own research on the stuff. Look into it further than me. I'm just giving you like a brief overview here, right? Of potential. We're just talking about possibilities here, not like, oh, this is definitive. Without necessarily filing an 8K for each open market purchase, as long as the purchases are routine within the policy's guidelines and not individually material. The delegated authority to the investment committee and the pre-disclosed Bitcoin strategy reduce the need for per transaction disclosures, unlike MicroStrategy's practice, which is driven by their Bitcoin-centric model and large-scale purchases. Because keep in mind, GameStop is now free cash flow positive. They had positive EPS for last year, and you can see that right here, right? They had strong net income. The year before, they also had positive EPS, but it was just over break even, right? And you can kind of see it better with this chart right here. And I think it will continue to trend up in the next year, even if interest rates gets cut, because yes, they'll earn a little bit less on their treasury bills. However, I think they're continuing to just cut. And people are like, oh, well, revenue keeps going down, right? It's like, yes, but their profitability keeps going up. And eventually, I do think that revenue will shift back to growth. I think it's going to take more time. It took more time than I originally realized, but they continue to get more profitable, and this story just continues to get more and more interesting. And I was going to go one more place with that, but ultimately, we'll see what the numbers are, right? So, significant purchases, those funded by debt equity, or ones that could impact investor decisions, would likely require an 8K. Still report holdings. You want deeper dive, blah, blah. Okay, so got a general overview, right? Let's see what the deeper dive says. So, comparison of filing practices. Strategy, okay, 8K material often tied to a capital raise. SEC filing, unclear. Possible periodic reports. Okay. So, interesting. Tesla's, they didn't file it when they bought it back in January 2021. Wow, I didn't realize it was that long ago at this point. But also, Tesla is so massive in terms of its market capitalization and like balance sheet that even though this value of Bitcoin has gone up a lot since they acquired it, it's still so minimal. But let's see. Tesla buys Bitcoin, plans to accept it as payment. So was this during an SEC filing? Bitcoin as payment has been credited with the raising of cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, through his messages on Twitter. Keep in mind, this was 2021. Who would buy that CNBC membership? Not me. Also accepting Bitcoin, but a limited base. I think they undid that since then. It jumped as much as 20%. That's crazy. I do at this point think Bitcoin's a good thing, and I'm a supporter of Bitcoin. So it looks like, though, that this was a just general SEC filing, not a just 10Q or 10K filing that took place. So worth noting. Let's see, given the investment policy structure, I just want to skim through it because it's long. I don't want to sit and bore you guys and just read this. But given the investment policy structure, Bitcoin purchases are likely in the ordinary course of business, especially if made regularly under commitment oversight. If each purchase is small, below the 10% threshold of total assets and not otherwise material, an 8K may not be required under item 2.01. Practitioners often use 5 to 10% thresholds for materiality, with qualitative factors also considered. Does your acquisition agreement trigger? Okay, see, let's check that out. For example, 10 million Bitcoin buy with a company of 1 billion in assets, 1% is unlikely to file trigger a filing, while a $150 million buy by the same company, 15% would. However, if the company raises capital specifically to buy Bitcoin, as strategy often does, the 8K may be for the financing event, with Bitcoin purchase disclosed therein. For buys using existing cash without new financing, the need for an 8K diminishes unless the purchase is significant. So overall here, it's still, I think, up for debate, even after kind of skimming through all this here. But I want to see, does your acquisition agreement trigger a Form 8K? While public companies contemplating an acquisition should consider if the execution of the acquisition agreement and or completion of the acquisition may trigger a filing. Item 1.01 Form 8K requires disclosure when a registrant enters a material definitive agreement. Okay, let's go to 2.01. It sounds more relative to this. So, provides that when a registrant has completed the acquisition of a significant amount of assets other than the ordinary course of business, be required to file an 8K and disclose certain information regarding the acquisition within 4 business days for the completion of the acquisition. Unlike item 1.01, the determination of whether the completion of an acquisition triggers item 2.01 is based on bright line quantitative test. So that seems debatable. What is that, right? So this is what I do. This is my behind the scenes research process. So I'll just say what mean? Right? Bright line quantitative test. Let's just see. For specific objective numerical thresholds or criteria used to determine whether a particular event, transaction, or condition meets regulatory and reporting requirement, context, test to assess materiality, context and SEC regulations, bright line, asset tests, or acquired assets exceed 10% of the company's total assets, 20% for larger acquisitions. So it's debatable, right? It's debatable. It seems 5 to 10% of Bitcoin purchase affecting 5 to 10% of GameStop's total assets or cash reserves, 1.3 billion, could be deemed material, requiring 8K. Excuse me, but still wildly up for debate, right? And this is where you could just keep digging further. You could keep be like, Rock, give me more sources, read those sources. Those sources will bring you to more questions. And at the end of the day, we're not going to know until we know, right? Either we're going to know from when a filing does come out and say, hey, actually we didn't buy Bitcoin until now. Here's an 8K. Or it's going to be the quarterly earnings report, which, by the way, I will be streaming live. So stay tuned for that as soon as we get the day. I thought I saw somebody post a day that they were going to release earnings. It just came out. It should be coming out any day now. See, they always announce it the release date, and then a couple weeks later is the actual report. But don't see it yet here. I don't believe anything until I hear from GameStop. One thing to note, just small, that we didn't hear from GameStop, that does seem pretty legitimate, which is rare. Where did I put it over here? Oh yes, GameStop Canada was acquired. For at which price, we do not know, but they should get a one-time gain on this. I don't expect it to be too massive, but just another little thing they're doing to add to their cash balances. It's not like, oh yeah, they could just sell off everything to get all together and everything's great. I think it's more like, okay, well, we're not profiting here. It's just not going to work. Profitability is number one focus. That's just really the tone they've set. And remember that letter Ryan Cohen wrote a while back basically saying, hey, manage the company's money as if it's your own. That's the expectation. So we'll see. Let's see what you guys are saying here. And we're becoming too reliant. I'm not expecting Bitcoin. It's not very Ryan-like. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm expecting not the greatest earnings report as it's Q1. No Bitcoin and stock drop big. Curious what they sold the Canadian stores for. Yeah, me too, John. I am very curious what they sold it for. Although I feel like, I don't know, given that they added, the investment policy to reflect Bitcoin, I feel like they're going to acquire Bitcoin, but in the way that would be quote Ryan-like, right, which we're all obviously just speculating here, would be to only use the money they're raising, because the offering literally says, expects to use the net proceeds for general corporate purposes, including the acquisition of Bitcoin, in a manner consistent with the GameStop's investment policy, which makes me kind of think hey, we put the investment policy in our report, we announced it was amended. In our offering of these convertible notes, we are saying we are going to use it to buy Bitcoin. So that almost, the more I'm talking about it right now and just thinking about it, I just feel like they already acquired Bitcoin and they just didn't report it yet, and we're going to find out on the earnings report. That's just my gut feeling. But I am just a guy on the internet, so don't trust me on that, right? And then if that does happen, what happens with the stock, right? Part of it will probably have to do with the numbers a little bit, but I feel like that's really what the market's looking for. I honestly feel like even if the numbers were really good, and like you mentioned, it is Q1, so you should lower your expectations a little bit. But I feel like, since Q1 last year, they have shaved off like a lot of excess. I'm hoping SG&A goes down a little bit more, not too much dramatically more. Maybe we get a number like 270, right? 260, but not too sure on that. We'll have to see. And then what are we looking at for net income? Because Q1's the only quarter that wasn't profitable in 2024. So can they pull off profitability or at least break even there, right? Because also you got to think about they got a lot less business in Q1. It's just the nature of it. Everyone's kind of tapped out from Christmas and the holiday season, all the gift giving, right? And it's just kind of how it goes. It's always how it's been with their business. But really, I think the market's looking for Bitcoin. That's honestly my thought process right now. But at the end of the day, we just don't know. We just don't know until we know, right? And that's just how it goes. The Canadian stores, yep, still Bitcoin isn't exactly needed for GameStop, though the pathway is right path to mess with people that have the legacy short positions. Literally billions of shares still floating around. Infinity Nova, hey, your words, not mine. But yeah, listen, I think I understand why not everybody wants the company to acquire Bitcoin, and it's like, well, for me, right? You see the shirt. For those of you who missed the beginning, I've had the shirt for a long time. I didn't just go buy it recently, but I think, people who own Bitcoin buy Bitcoin for Bitcoin. People who own GameStop buy GameStop for GameStop. They don't necessarily they're not like maybe some recent people, right? Or institutions are buying GameStop for the Bitcoin exposure, or I think at least people who bought these convertible notes, right? Because it's like, there's very limited downside risk because you could just look at GameStop's balance sheet and see, okay, they have a great balance sheet. So worst case scenario, we get our principal back, right? Like, yes, we're not earning any interest on it, but best case scenario, the price goes up a lot. They acquire Bitcoin, and we're able to convert our shares, right, at this 37.5% premium over this, $29.85. So they have to be trading at that premium, 130% of that for like X amount of time, right? And I just wonder, like, are we going to get another offering? If we get another offering and there's no Bitcoin, it's just kind of like, okay, what's going on here, right? Not even like what's going on, like it's bad. It's more like it just wouldn't really make sense. So I feel like, and again, I know maybe changing what I'm saying throughout, but I'm just thinking about it in real time. But as of now, I'll say my gut feeling is that they're going to report the upcoming earnings. They're going to show they bought like $1 billion worth of Bitcoin or used the net proceeds, right? 1.48 billion, because the initial purchaser exercised the option for the additional notes. Show that they spent that much, no more than that much on Bitcoin, right? Maybe a little bit less. Maybe they only spent the 1.28 billion, or like we'll pocket the rest to earn on our treasury bills, right? Because think about it, they borrowed this money at 0%. So even if they just put it in the treasury bills, it still would be yielding higher than what they're paying, because they're gonna get like a 4 to 5% APY as of now, right? And they're going to pay 0% on their debt. So they're going to net the difference of that. And that's going to continue to help the net margin, while they're still working on the operating margin and something like selling off the Canadian business, and they're working to sell off the French business, is going to improve the operating margin. But the net margin will continue to get stronger if they have, interest continuing to be earned. And it will only help them, right? And it'll help free cash flow. But I think ultimately, if they are going to raise more capital through a convertible note offering, it would have to be after earnings, because you would also think if they do come out and say, okay, we actually have this Bitcoin, or when I say come out and say, as in like it's just shown on their balance sheet, how does the market react to that, right? Like, let's say in theory, GameStop keeps going up leading into the report, right? Say the earnings say on here that's this date, but that's not wrong. It's going to be at least like the first or second week of June. So let's say, leading up to this, let's get the SPY out of here. Trash. Okay. So let's say we run all the way up to 45 going into the earnings report, and then it comes out they own Bitcoin. I don't really see the stock like booming higher, right, on the news of it. But if it stays around here, or it does go to 45, and then it comes out, hey, they didn't buy Bitcoin yet, I think the market will sell off. And it's not even necessarily like individuals like myself. I just feel like it kind of just be the general reaction, right? And it's all the headlines like, oh yeah, they didn't buy Bitcoin. I bet the headlines will be like, oh, they're misleading investors. Oh my gosh, these people who thought they were in GameStop for Bitcoin are getting screwed and this and that, not realizing that most people who are long on Bitcoin were buying in this entire range and long before they were getting involved in Bitcoin in any way, right? But again, we don't know anything until we know, right? That's just how it goes. YouTuber was predicting they sold the Canadian stores for 35 to 50 million range. John, I think that kind of makes sense. When you look at Q4, right? Is this one? No, this is Q4. So let's look at Canada. Whoa, not a bookmark. Control F, Canada. Control F is your friend on financial documents. So I would assume, it includes this manufacturing center, right? So 119,000 square feet, pretty large. Obviously not even as close to as large as the Texas one, but they're third biggest of the 5 that they had. So that's going to be included in it. From operations, net sales. So Canada for the year was about 5.3% of sales, about 204 billion. Or sorry, not billion, million. So I don't know. I feel like that might be lowballing a little bit, the 35 to 50 million dollar range, but also they weren't net profitable when looking at Canada, right? So they lost 88.2 million on the bottom line. Oh no, sorry, that's the change. I would have to see the net income. Do they even have that? I think they do somewhere. Let's see if we can scroll through and find it. So that would kind of, theoretically lower it. Okay, so they lost. Whoa. They lost. Here's the 204.3 million. Their operating loss was negative 10 million on that revenue, right? And their cost of sales was 152, and their overhead was 61.7, right? So it just depends how they value it. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in terms of valuation, but my gut feeling is 35 to 50 is a little bit low. Maybe it's more like 60 to 70, right? But maybe I'm just being a little bit too generous. That's also fair to say. That's something I'd have to do more research on, but appreciate you sharing that. PED drill 4 more new oil well with no debt and plenty of cash with a low PE of 3 with upgrades to 1.5 and 2.25 to close at 65 cents. Can double from here. Michael Anthony, that is great. That's fantastic. But we're not interested in that here, honestly. It's okay. It's okay. You're welcome to share that. I welcome the Bears. I welcome the Bulls. I welcome all to the stream. But we're going to keep focusing on GameStop. So on that note, I do want to, and I hate this format. We have to do this better. Okay, where's the Q1? Open document. There we go. So let's look at last year. Last year at this time, right? When I say at this time, the Q1 report. They had just about $1 billion in cash, and you get the marketable securities, so they were a little bit over $1 billion. A total of $2.5 billion in assets. Since then, they raised capital 3 times, issuing shares, and then 1 time with a 0% convertible note offering. So as far as we're aware, they're absolutely stacked with cash. What percentage of that is in Bitcoin? I don't know, right? And we'll potentially find out. And they have very limited long-term debt. It's going to be nearly gone at this point. And also, their overhead has decreased because they sold off the Canadian business. They continue to close unprofitable locations. So will Q1 be profitable, right? I guess you could start with that question. I'm not going to definitively say yes, but honestly, I feel like they're going to be pretty close to break even because when you look at last year, it was negative 11 cents. That's not too bad, right? And also you could see that the actual number was negative 32.3 million. It was, we're seeing improvement each year all across the board in terms of the net income, right? You could see obviously the revenues going down. But I feel like, if SG&A could get closer to, 260, 270, they're going to have a lot more interest income. So that could really push them to profitability. And then, of course, cost of sales is always a factor. And since last year at this same time, they are focusing more on the collectibles market, primarily with PSA cards, such as this beautiful this is my Macklin Celebrini card, rookie card that is. And I have this pack here. I'm literally waiting till my other cards get finished getting graded at GameStop. They're almost back, but I'm saving this pack, and I'm going to open it either on one of these streams or on Twitter, so stay tuned for that. But I'm just sitting on it. I could just feel it. A good card is in there, but we're waiting. We're being very patient. But having said that, collectibles generally, higher margins, PSA generally, it's kind of like a service they're providing, so there's not really a cost of sales. I guess technically cost of sales is like what they're paying PSA, the difference of it. They're not making like massive amounts on each PSA card being sent in, but as they're scaling it, they're going to continue to profit. And as PSA raise their prices, like GameStop raise their prices too. And keep in mind, CEO of Collectors, which is the parent company of PSA, is also on the board of directors now for GameStop. And also, it'd be nice to see if he acquired some shares after earnings. That would be sick, because then we'd know, like, okay, he's really in this thing, right? So I don't think it's impossible for them to be net income profitable. Although one quick thing I want to mention, you're going to start to notice in the upcoming earnings report, there's going to start to be a difference between basic, I was about to say net loss per share, basic operating profit or loss, or sorry, net loss or profit per share versus the diluted. And the diluted will factor in as if the convertible debt is converted into shares. So this number will be lower, right? Or in this instance, like it's negative, but theoretically, right? Let's say EPS comes in, basic EPS comes in at like 5 cents a share. The diluted one might be like 3 cents, because it's considering that the debt is converted to shares in terms of like the diluted amount, right? And it also will say that in the weighted average shares outstanding here. So that's just something to kind of look out for in the next earnings report. Whereas in the past, like basic versus diluted, like earnings per share was roughly always the same, right? Because they weren't doing convertible notes at that time. So between PSA, the one-time sale of the Canadian operations, and increased interest income, I feel like profitable Q1 is very much in the cards. I don't think it's a lock. It's not an absolute guarantee, but I feel like it's in the cards, right? And I am really curious to see, though, even if it is profitable, like how much of that is because of the interest income and how much of it is lack of operating loss or surprise operating profit, right? Because ultimately, they do need to get to an operating profit. I have good faith that this will be the year, because they're selling off the French and Canadian businesses and really slimming down the U.S. to the point where it seems like the U.S. will be continuously profitable from here, and that's primarily where they're operating out of. So I think it's possible, right? I think it's possible. But again, I'm a guy on the internet. What do I know? Nobody knows. Nobody knows until we know, right? So all you can really do is we can always speculate all day long, but we don't know until like they actually come out with the actual filing and actual report. So that's just how it goes, right? That's just how it goes. But we got their ATM, which they mentioned. That was the first one. Let's see if there's anything else of significance here. You can see, we'll definitely always look at like the categories, right? And see, I want to see collectibles go up year over year, given that they're now doing PSA and they weren't doing it last year. And also just in the past year or so, or I feel like over the course of the last year, trading cards have been more a part of what GameStop's doing. And I've kind of speculated in the past a little bit, and I still do, that maybe once they're completely settled in terms of like selling off the French, Canadian businesses, winding down locations that are just simply not performing, do they start to open like card stops just to specifically focus on cards, right? Maybe that's something you potentially do down the line, because I think I'm not the only one that's saying this, that like I want to see them do more than just buy Bitcoin. Even though I'm a mega Bitcoin bull, I mean, look at my shirt, and then I've been buying and acquiring Bitcoin for several years. I still want to see them do more at the end of the day, right? I think they have a lot of potential, and I still understand, some people out there like, big GameStop, it's just around, it's just a meme stock, it's only because all these people hold it and talk about it, otherwise it'd be long dead. But at the end of the day, if they have a strong balance sheet, positive free cash flow, positive EPS, they've been able to raise all this capital, right? And something I always kind of go back to is, can you name any other company, right? Like let's say I was from the future and I came back to you right here, January 1st, 2024, and I told you, hey, in a year and a half from now, right? GameStop's at $14 a share at that point. In a year and a half from now, GameStop will be at $35 a share. They'll have issued shares 3 different times and done a convertible note offering for 0% interest. You would have said you're crazy. There's no way that's going to happen, right? If you told someone what unfolded over the past year or so, that was going to happen at any point back here, it would have been like, no, what do you mean? But show me another example of a company that's able to raise capital 4 times and the stock price is performing better than before they raised the capital, right? And it has generally to do with dilution, right? People are, dilution. But who else out there, right? Because like the 3 share issuances were pure dilution. The convertible note offering, yes, kind of dilution, but it's also not really diluted until they actually convert. And if they convert to shares, that means the share price is performing. But overall, I just don't know of any other companies out there that issue shares 3 times, right? Even before the convertible note offering that we got around here, right? They issued shares 3 times in this range. And after that, they never really went lower than 20, right? Yeah, okay, touched 18 here, maybe touched like 19 here, right? You can see more specifically. But they basically floated around 20 as like a quote unquote floor, right? That was kind of seen as the floor on the stock for the past year. So at least that's how I've kind of thought about it. What situation does that happen with any other company, right? And that's just kind of another aspect of what makes the GameStop story so unique. And now we're kind of breaking out here. And listen, it's not impossible that they do another convertible note offering, but I'm going to stick with that. I think it would be after the earnings report. I could see the earnings coming out. Great, nice reaction. After hours, everyone's like, oh yeah, they bought Bitcoin. Oh, the EPS was positive. Oh, free cash flow was positive. This is great. And then the next day, and then it's like up at like $40, $50 a share, right? And again, I'm just theorizing. I have no idea. And then the next day, they're like, convertible note offering, right? And then there'll be people who are very upset, which I get it. That's always going to be people happy and not happy with their decisions or any company's decision. But at the end of the day, it'll just give them more cash to earn interest and or buy Bitcoin, right? And then the opportunities, like the whole thing for me is that like they continue to have opportunities, right? GameStop's got ops. They got ops. Opportunities, that is, right? And that could be with, the card stop scenario I was saying. They could be with an acquisition. It could be like, hey, let's go buy other companies that we believe in, right? They're like, let's go buy stock in NVIDIA because we think the gaming segment will take off with it, right? Or something. I don't think they'd actually do that specifically. But it's just, that's what I think, kind of scares people betting against it, or I would imagine, right? Because I'm not betting against it, so I don't know, is that you just don't know, right? You just don't know with this company what they're going to do. And then that also kind of like makes people shy away from it. But that also, at the same time, creates opportunities for someone like myself who's invested in it. It's like the opportunities are endless. So it's like the market can't even like price it quite right this whole time because and also, there's outside factors of some craziness that goes on behind the scenes, right? That's topic for another day. But with all that, it's like nobody truly knows the value of this thing. That's what it seems like. And I think it's just an incredible story, and I'm so wrapped up in it. But not like all my emotions, but their strong balance sheet and the fact that they're focusing on profitability, they're getting the free cash flow positive, and they just keep grinding forward little by little and adapting and moving in the right direction is, to me, what keeps me satisfied as a shareholder. But listen, I get it. It's not for everyone. You might be like watching this right now. You've never seen this channel. Thank you for being here, either way. And they're, I'm not going to buy Bitcoin. I'm just curious what these people are saying about it since it's trending again. But listen, that's okay. It's not for everyone. Not every investment is for everyone, right? Just like Bitcoin's not for everyone. So I understand, like, not everyone is too fond of the idea of them buying Bitcoin. And I honestly think it wouldn't be the best approach to be a pure, like, Bitcoin treasury, because that's also what it seems like. There's people like, I don't think they should mess with Bitcoin. The people on the other side are like, yes, they're becoming a Bitcoin treasury company. They're using all their excess cash. They're using their convertible debt offering where they raise the cash to buy Bitcoin. They're going to keep doing that. While I think they could do more convertible debt offerings, I don't see a world where they endlessly do that and put all their cash reserves into Bitcoin and purely become a Bitcoin treasury company. And I don't think that's the best approach, because I don't think that's why a lot of people are holding the stock, or it would kind of like make them one-dimensional, right? I think my opinion is the best case scenario for them is like that's just part of what they're doing. And I believe in Bitcoin, so I think Bitcoin's value will go up. So it's just going to make their balance sheet stronger and hedge against crisis, right? Which maybe sounds crazy, but I think this is the first time we're kind of seeing it with what gold and Bitcoin has done over the past year, that if it's a situation where treasury bills can't be sold in terms of like foreign investors, like there just isn't enough demand from them, we'll have a real problem on our hands, right? And then the Federal Reserve will have to step in and buy the notes, right? And then guess what? Fire up the money printer, right? Fire up the money printer, which just makes inflation rage on. And then that means Bitcoin's higher, right? For me, my overall thesis with Bitcoin boils down to the fact that it doesn't matter who the president is, who's in Congress, what's going on, the United States of America, how effective Doge is. The United States of America always prints more money as time rolls on. And nobody can go out there and just magically create more Bitcoin. But, there are certain risks that I'll acknowledge with Bitcoin, right? Let's say a lot of Bitcoin treasury companies start popping up and, aggressively buying Bitcoin with debt. And then we go through a bear cycle, because that does happen, and then they get wiped out. That wouldn't be the most ideal, right? But then it's just a buying opportunity for those that are long on it. Another potential, I guess you could say, risk around Bitcoin is there's the argument that quantum computing is going to be able to crack the blockchain and make it so that people's wallets are hacked. I don't think we're really quite there yet at all. I think that is a way overblown fear at this given point in time. Although, like we're talking about earlier, AI and all that sort of stuff is rapidly developing, and the genie's out of the bottle, so there's no going back. So it's not impossible, right? That's something that happens one day, as far as I can tell. But as of now, I don't really see that as a risk. But a lot of different thoughts today. Just a lot of different thoughts of what's going on. I can't wait to stream the actual earnings day. That's always a lot of fun. Those of you that were with me last earnings powered through being sick. This time, better not get sick. We better not get sick. The only thing that better be sick is GameStop's earnings report itself, not me. But yeah, I think we'll pretty much wrap it up from there, because I can. What up, what up? Thanks for popping in. Yeah, so we'll see, right? That's all we can do, is just see what happens. So nobody truly knows. I just like covering the story, looking at what might happen, thinking out loud. That's just how I rock and roll. We talked about this a little bit before. I don't think we're going to get the special announcement that, GameStop bought Bitcoin at the Bitcoin conference. Maybe, right? It's not impossible, but it just doesn't seem, quote, very Ryan Cohen-like. But let's see. Example calculation, 4.55 billion, 1.3. See, this is out of date right here, because obviously they have a lot more. 7.7, 100 million potential material if it significantly impacts liquidity. 500 million purchase would be 11% of total assets, 38% of cash reserves. Likely material due to liquidity aspect. So, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the investment policy, coupled with the fact that the issuance of the convertible notes indicates that it would include the acquisition of Bitcoin in a manner consistent with GameStop's investment policy, kind of feels like a loophole, right? Or not a loophole, maybe that's not the best way to put it, but a way that allows them to acquire Bitcoin without it being considered material or requiring like an 8K filing at that time. So still remember the earnings you did with Marantz. Hey, because I can. Thanks, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. Hope Marantz is doing well. I got to get back in touch with them. It's been a while. But yeah, no, I should also maybe do some more collabs. There's a lot of people out there to talk about Bitcoin, but I don't know. You guys that I watch a while know I kind of just rock solo. I kind of just like to freeball it, right? I'm not saying I'm against what do they call it? Collabing, right, with other people. But this is kind of how I feel comfortable in doing it. I'm just trying to keep it light and fun. And I'm not saying I'm never going to talk to anyone again, but just kind of rocking. I kind of, what do they say? March to the beat of my own drum or whatever. But that's just me. So, but yeah, I appreciate you, man, because I can. I know you've been here for a minute, so I appreciate that very much. And, I know for periods of time I've kind of gone through a hiatus and just doing a lot of different stuff. I'm trying to do a lot of different stuff at this point in my life. Is mid-20s individual, just they try to figure out kind of what direction I want to take things and just try a bunch of different stuff, have different experiences and whatnot. But I'm in a good spot right now, I would say. I really like doing this channel as just for fun, and that's the thing. I always want to keep it fun because I feel like that's the easiest way for me to stay committed to doing this, because if I enjoy it, I don't really see it as work, right? I feel like when I got myself in a habit in the past of I got to make sure my tweet is perfect. I got to make sure my stream is perfect. My video, absolutely perfect. And I realized I got to start driving myself crazy, frustrating myself. But I'm not that I'm going to try and purposely do bad, right? Or not prepare, right? Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. But also I'm not going to be overly stressed, right? Especially my tweets, I would be I gotta make sure the grammar's right. I got to make sure, this is good, comma in the right spot, right? That this is the proper word versus this word. And I'm all right, I can't be thinking about that too much anymore. Not saying I don't want to get the information right. I think that's very, very important. But if I don't use the proper exact word, right, so be it. And at the end of the day, guys, this has become my new mantra, but I am just a guy on the internet. You can't blindly trust me. You can't blindly trust anyone out there. And the reality of it is I'm going to make a mistake here or there. And that's just kind of how it goes. And I'm always going to do my best to correct that. Not saying that as like, oh yeah, I'm just going to come out here and just spew a bunch of BS, right? No, absolutely not. But at times, I may make a mistake. So, feel free to let me know if you say, hey, doesn't quite sound right. But also, that's why you should always, do your own due diligence and double check things, fact check things, right? And that's just how it goes. That's just how it goes, guys. Yeah. So I think we'll leave it here for today. Gonna really start trying to stream Friday afternoon. That'll be my consistent day of the week. A day like today, I'm just like, you know what? GameStop's trending. I'm watching it. It's one of those days where I keep checking my phone. Where's the stock price at, right? I can't help but keep checking what's going on with this thing. So I was like, you know what? Let me just do another quick stream right after I log off work here today. So yeah, stay tuned though. I really want to make Fridays because I got to work a little early on Fridays. So Friday streams at like 4:35 p.m. for an hour or two, just heading into the weekend, kind of recapping the week. I want to make that kind of my bread and butter, my main schedule. And then when I can, I'll just hop on, do a quick stream. If you could pop in, great. If not, all good. I understand. Not everyone could be here for all the streams, but anytime you spend here, I do appreciate it. So feel free to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I always feel low-key cringe when I say that, but got to do it, right? It's just part of the YouTube game. So I appreciate you guys very much. Remember, never invest more than you can afford to lose. Always know thyself and stick to your own strategy. Don't let your emotions get involved. Don't, if you're losing sleep at night or constantly looking at the price to the point it's like really stressing you out, you got to understand if you have like too much allocation. And that's not even just for GameStop. That's for like anything, right? And I think that's so important to grasp because it's like, oh, I really like this thing. I want to put this money in it. But if you're stressing about it in any way, then your weight might be too heavy in it, right? You might need to be more cash heavy. And it all depends on an individual too, right? Different people have different tolerances for risk depending on their own financial situation. But that's also why, even beyond the market, you got to have a budget. You got to be organized. You got to understand like, hey, what am I going to do in terms of like amount I want to invest weekly? What do I want to put in emergency savings versus investments? Because if you do have to use your emergency savings and you take your emergency savings and put in stocks and the market has to be in a downturn, all of a sudden it's not an ideal scenario. And then the market comes up, you try and buy it back, you buy up top, and then it comes down, right? So gotta know yourself, your own situation, and it's not going to be perfect, right? It's not going to be like, oh yeah, I know myself, like I'm just going to do this and it's great. Like you have to keep evolving and improving, and I've found that with myself. Anytime I'm like, okay, I try and autopilot it too much, right? Like I'm doing like DCA, but I always keep an eye on things and I'm like, okay, should I increase my DCA? Should I be putting more into savings right now because I'm thinking about, some things coming up where I want to have cash available. I don't want to be in a situation ever where I have to prematurely sell investments. At what prices do I sell investments and diversify when it comes too much of a weight, right? You got to constantly be thinking about all these things, but at the same time, not like rashly decide, or I should say irrationally decide on the spot, like, oh, you know what, I need to trim this position. Okay, if you're thinking you need to trim a position, sit on it. Think about it more the next day, the following day. And if you're a long-term investor, like a day or two's change is not gonna, dramatically make the difference. You're better off just thinking about it, really digesting it, and making sure that, hey, if you do decide I want to trim, that's a decision you absolutely want to make and you're not going to regret it later. Whereas if you're just thinking about it one day and like you're busy at work, right? This happened to me in the past, or you got other stuff on your mind. You're like, all right, let me just trim this. And then you think later, oh, well, why did I do that? I should have waited. I should have thought about it more, right? But that's part of the game of investing, right? Part of the game of financial life. You got to just keep improving, keep evolving. And yeah, I think I've been on a tangent, so I'll wrap it up here. Everything I own on this trade and has been for the past 4 years. Honestly, been doing this for 20 plus years and have feeling quite calm for the past 4 years. Infinity Nova, hey, I respect that. Listen, I think for me, I really acquired most of my shares a while back and continue accumulating. And honestly, I really slowed down accumulating after here, right? After this bottom, or probably somewhere in here relatively, where I was like, okay, I don't think we're ever going back to $10 a share again. Or I'm sorry. Whoops, looking at the wrong spot here. Down here is more so kind of when I stopped. Not to say I haven't bought any shares this whole time, but for the most part, I would say like my heavy buying was like in this range right here. And for that, I am very, very fortunate. And again, that doesn't mean I didn't buy shares back here. But yeah, that's just me. That's just me. I'm comfortable where my position's at right now. I'm very content with it, and I'm just gonna let it ride because at the end of the day, I like the stock. And yeah, thanks for being here. Hope everyone has a good day. I will be live again on Friday. Stay tuned for that around 5 p.m. Eastern. Take care.